ora koutou. Can you come up? Sorry, too far. Kia ora koutou. I'm Katharine Watson. I'm from the Christchurch Archaeology Project, and I'm here speaking on behalf of myself and my co-collaborators, Hayden Court and Jessie Garland. In June 2024, we, the founders of Christchurch Archaeology Project, launched the online Museum of Archaeology Ōtautahi, in what was undoubtedly the highlight of my career so far. I've been an archaeologist for 20 years, and this represented something of a dream come true. So today, I'm here to tell you a little bit more about the Museum of Archaeology Ōtautahi and how it came into being. Of course, 8 minutes is next to no time at all, so it's very much a once over lightly, but I hope it gives you a sense of what we've achieved and the possibilities and potential of it. So like so many things in Ōtautahi Christchurch today, the Museum of Archaeology Ōtautahi grew out of the Canterbury earthquakes of 2010 and 2011, when we suddenly saw a huge increase in the volume of archaeological work that was taking place. And I was very conscious from very early on in the piece of just how much data we were uncovering and the significance of what we were finding and learning. And just by way of context, most of the sites that we investigated were of European origin. They date between 1850 and 1900, but there are a small and very significant subset of Māori archaeological sites dating from the 13th century through until I think the 14th or 15th centuries. But all of the data at the moment in the museum is related to the European archaeology, and I'll touch on that again at the end. But as I say, we were getting this truly random sample of archaeological sites from across the city that documented how you build a colonial city in the 19th century as part of the British Empire. And so you've got these big kind of stories or questions that this data can address, but at the same time, you've got the stories of the individual people who moved to Christchurch to make a new, better life there. For some people, this was a huge success. For others, it ended in tragedy and what we would think of as failure. But it was, for me, the important thing was making this data accessible to people. I mean, we as archaeologists could tell the stories, we could share what we were learning, but I wanted to be able to give people the ability to ask their own questions of that data, whether that's a school child in Christchurch, someone who used to live in the city, or a researcher in, say, Melbourne or London who's working on a similar time period, because the international significance of this collection is recognised. The other things that were in the back of my mind is that as part of this archaeological work we do, we produce technical reports, and these are made available to the public via Heritage New Zealand Pauhere Taonga, but they're technical reports. I don't even find them interesting to read or necessarily that useful. And more than that, they're produced as a PDF, so accessing the data from within them, you don't need me to tell you how much use that can be for a researcher. And the other aspect that really concerns me is that this data that we're producing, and when I talk about data, I'm talking about the raw data, I'm talking about the maps, the plans, the photographs, all of the statistical analysis that might take place, or the identification of the artefacts, that's not protected by law. I could delete all of it tomorrow and there's no repercussion, and yet for me, and I think probably for most people who understand the data, it's a unique insight into our past. Only archaeology can tell us the things that this data tells us. So it's really, and if we lose it, we lose that ability to understand our past fully. And so from this, Christchurch Archaeology Project, these are my two, it's Hayden and Jessie here, my co-collaborators, was founded to kind of establish, our mission is to save, share and research Ōtautahi Christchurch's archaeological heritage for everybody. So the first stage in this journey was thanks to the funding from Manatū Taonga through the COVID Regeneration Fund, was to construct the online Museum of Archaeology Ōtautahi, which is quite a mouthful and also has a very awkward acronym. Nonetheless, here we are. And this video is just going to hopefully play through and show you, are we going? Yes, some of what the Museum of Archaeology Ōtautahi can do. Now, so this is all online, it's freely accessible. There are actually two interfaces. There's the one that you can see now that's designed for the general public. There's another one that sits in behind this that contains all the raw data that's designed for researchers who want to dive a bit deeper, who want to get into all of the nitty-gritty of archaeological data. And let me tell you, there's a lot of nitty-gritty in archaeological data. So essentially, though, the database captures data about archaeological sites, about people, about organisations, and about artefacts. And you can see some of the artefacts here. And the important thing about it, or the key thing about it, is that it's all connected through time and space, essentially, which is much of what underlies archaeology. But every piece of data in there is connected to a geographic location via a range of ways. The data it's very difficult. We just about broke our software developers. We used a local company to build a bespoke database. All I can tell you about is that it's built in SQL. I don't know anything else about databases. But when we told them about stratigraphy, and you've got to think three-dimensionally, I think they nearly walked away from it, as well as the complexity of the data which we had collected over 10 years using different approaches by different people with very little standardisation. And look, and I can stand up here and say this because I was responsible for that. It's a mess. So part of the issue has been sorting this out and connecting everybody, connecting all of the data so that you can go in and enter your forebear's surname or your personal street address and start looking through what records we might hold about that. And then from there, it's designed so that you can sort of almost take a journey around the city by clicking on different links and connecting from person to person. So you can, we started off with, I think it was George Fletcher is who appears on the first slide, and you can look at who he was married to, who his children were, where he worked, what organisations he belonged to, and then you might click on the place he worked and it might take you to the site that we excavated there. And so you can learn more about this. So it's sort of this, I think of it as this lovely meandering journey of discovery, much the same discovery that any historical researcher will undertake, but this is based on archaeological data. And it is still very much in its infancy. This is version 1.0, and we're already starting to work on a funding application for version 2.0 because we can now see all of the problems that are inherent in this. And also, we've only got data in here from 450 odd sites. We excavated thousands of sites, so there's a lot more to be added in. So this future funding application is looking at a range of things. First and foremost is getting a map on the site. I can't believe we didn't think about having a map. We're archaeologists, they're fundamental to what we do, but there's no map of the city. So that's a really key thing. It's our most requested feature. We're starting to work with Ngāi Tahu to get data from sites of interest to Māori archaeologists in there, or to sites of interest to Māori in there. We're also wanting to add in all the backlog of data, as well as data from new sites that are still being excavated. And then we're looking into using AI tech to gather information from archaeological reports about buildings archaeology. We've got a lot of buildings archaeology data that's not in there. That needs to be added in. Basically, there's a lot more to do, but we've made a really good start thanks to the funding from Manatū Taonga. Thank you.
We had a few questions about some of these projects expanding beyond what has been shared here. Katharine, were there any plans for the archaeology project to move to other cities as well?
Yes, the naming is very deliberate in terms of Museum of Archaeology Ōtautahi. So the idea is that, of course, you could become Museum of Archaeology Tamaki Makaurau. And we do see what we've done as very much a model for a way of best practice for how you can share archaeological data and make it more widely available. So we'd love to see that happen. The reality of it actually happening, I suspect, is quite remote, but you can only hope and try.